and welcome in no off-seasoners to your live stream for your Monday Night Football prop bets. And what a week 4 it has been. What a season, really, it has been so far. A lot of people calling it random. A lot of people calling it a week with maybe too much variance. I would not disagree. It is weird. There's parity in the NFL always. There is variance in the NFL always. Maybe not as much as this. Maybe not this much variance going into week 5 already. Wow, we are almost a quarter way through your fantasy football seasons. We're not here to talk strictly fantasy, but we are here to talk some prop bets today, or tonight, I should say, on Monday Night Football. We've got the Los Angeles Rams visiting the San Francisco 49ers in a division rivalry. The last time these two teams met was in the playoffs last season. And the Los Angeles Rams, of course, took it away, took themselves to a Super Bowl championship. Do they look like that same team this season? Absolutely not. Do Kupp and Stafford still have that chemistry as if they're still in the 2021 season? Absolutely. It's the defense that doesn't look the same. It's the rushing game that doesn't look the same, and it might have more to do with Akers getting too much playing time and Henderson maybe not getting enough, which is interesting because Akers obviously the one with the bigger pedigree, but that is neither here nor there. You are here to figure out how we can make some money tonight off of Monday Night Football. I have brought, for those of you watching on YouTube, I have brought our money folder with best bets for tonight's game. We're going to crank through these, trying to get through all of these prop bets within 30 minutes so I don't waste your time, so that way you can crank these out, put them on your slips, whether it's on Prizepicks, Underdogs. If you've got questions, please send them on YouTube. I'm not monitoring anything on the Twitter Spaces. I'm just speaking on those airwaves there, so that way it gets out there. So we channel ourselves, not only video on YouTube, but Twitter as well on Spaces, which will be recorded as well. So here we are. Hope that coffee, water, whiskey, wine, beer, whatever is in your cup, whatever is in your can, whatever is in your glass, hope it's tasting well, because it's about to get better. And let's make some money. Let's make some money, squad. Let's squad up, assemble, and make some money. Here's some tidbits. Here are some statistics. Here are some of that stuff that you just crave for on those TV broadcasts. I'm going to bring it to you. First of all, before we get into those tidbits, San Francisco, right now, as I see it, they are a 2-point favorite. Close game. Vegas says close game. I would agree. We're talking about two really good defenses going into tonight's game. Yeah, and they're still a 2-point favorite. Right now, the total implied points is 42, which has moved down from 42.5. And there's really no way to spin that. I'm not sure if someone's been ruled out that can make it move, but I'm not worried. 76 degrees Fahrenheit in San Francisco in Levi Stadium tonight. Clear skies, not worried about weather. So, yeah, this will be a great game of football. I think there's going to be a lot of defense involved, and I think there's going to be potentially maybe not big plays, but there will be some offense involved as well. I mean, 42 implied points isn't the worst, but it's not the best either. 49ers, first and foremost, are still a top 5 rushing defense going into this game, while at the same time, the Los Angeles Rams are bottom 3. Bottom 3, not bottom 5, not bottom 4. They are bottom 3 in terms of rushing offense in the league so far. Is that something that we can take an edge on in terms of our bet slips? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, 49ers top D in rushing defense so far through 3 weeks of the 2022 NFL season. Los Angeles Rams out of Inglewood, California, are bottom 3 in terms of rushing offense. San Francisco also an amazing defense in the air. They have allowed the least, not the second least, not the third least, but the least amount of passing yards through 3 weeks. You do not start your tight ends against these guys. You do not start your quarterbacks against these guys. If you have Stafford, you probably waited on him. You're probably going to, if you have him in redraft, you're probably just starting him. And you've waited, obviously, until Monday Night Football. You have no choice. You are starting this man. It is 6/22, October 3rd. Let's squat up here. One last tidbit. Los Angeles Rams, although the defense isn't amazing, they allow the least explosive plays through the air through the first 3 weeks so far, okay? The least amount of explosive plays. So that means Deebo, Ayuk, maybe don't expect them to go off for that massive 50-yard play. Maybe don't expect Kittle to go for that 40-yard touchdown play. But there's still money to be made. So we're going to get that done. Los Angeles Rams are 1-4 in the last 5 matchups against the 49ers. Their only win, as I said at the top of this show, was the last time that they played in the playoffs and, of course, went on to win the Super Bowl. But they lost 4 straight games going into that playoff game last season. And, yeah, so it's been a tough streak for the Rams. Now they're coming into a tough game. Their nemesis, Jimmy G, is back again, starting now with Trey Lance out for the season. Let's get into what you're actually here for. Prop bets. Let's roll into it. First and foremost, if you've watched this show before, you know me. I always start with the most important position. That means we are going to start with Matt Stafford. Former Super Bowl quarterback. Let's look at his INTs tonight. If you've been on this show before, if you've watched any part of me, you know I crave, I go after these types of bets. 0.5 INTs tonight for Matt Stafford. How do we get an edge on this? Matt Stafford, 0.5 interceptions. This is one of my best bets of the night. Why? 7 out of 10 times, also known as 70%. Yes, I did the math. 7 out of 10 times equals 70%. He has hit this interception prop 7 out of 10 times since last year on the road. And, of course, Los Angeles Rams on the road against San Francisco tonight. 7 out of 10 times, all right? This year, he's only played 1 road game, didn't throw an interception, so this man is due. It gets better. He's averaging 1.2 interceptions per game on average last year on the road, okay? So every game on the road, he threw about 1.25 of an interception. All right, it gets a little better. What about in general? What about not just on the road? 13 out of 20 times, also known as 65% of the time, he has thrown an interception or more last season at all. Home, away, doesn't matter. Okay? So, this hit rate for him on the road, Stafford just throws interceptions on the road. It's what he does. I expect him to throw at least 1 tonight. We're taking the over. Stamp it, double stamp it, seal it, envelope it, send it to your league. Put it on Sleeper, put it on Prizepicks, put it on Underdog. Doesn't matter what platform. If it's got a 0.5 interception, you are smashing that over. This is for educational purposes, not for financial gain, but we are going to make some money off of this, absolutely. 0.5 interceptions for Stafford tonight over, one of my best bets. The other best bet for tonight's game is on Deebo Samuel. We're going to finish up. We'll get to Deebo and the 49ers in a moment. We're going to finish up with Akers, Henderson, Kupp, Higbee before we even touch the 49ers. Lot of time, lot of show to go here. One last tidbit on Stafford before I move on from him. Again, he has hit away interceptions 7 out of 10 times. Not only that, when he does throw an interception on the road, it's at least 2 or more, okay? So this guy loves to be risky, loves to make turnover-worthy plays. while on the road, which he is tonight. Let's transition to, we're going to stay with Stafford. Let's transition to his pass attempts, okay? Let's transition to these pass attempts, 35.5 pass attempts on Underdog tonight. I'm not sure if that's moved. I'm going to look that up live right now for you guys as I'm on the airwaves on Twitter Spaces and also live for you who'd like to see my face on YouTube. 35.5 pass attempts. We are taking the under. That's a lot to ask for Stafford, okay? It's a 42 total implied points according to Vegas. And the 49ers have allowed an average of 29.3 pass attempts per game through these first 3 weeks. I'll say that again. His prop tonight, Stafford, his prop tonight is 35.5 pass attempts. And the 49ers have allowed an average of 29.3 pass attempts per game this season. Okay? Next question might be, well, who have the 49ers played up against? Who have they absolutely demolished in terms of pass attempts so far? Well, they played the Texans, Davis Mills. They played Chicago Bears, Justin Fields. The Texans was preseason. They've played the Bears, Seahawks, Broncos in that horrible, horrible primetime game last week on September 25th. So, yeah, they've played some quarterbacks that just have not been slinging the ball around, okay? Stafford does throw more than Fields, Geno Smith, and Russell Wilson. But I'll still tell you why. The numbers are not encouraging as far as hit rates. So that's why we're taking the under on his 35.5 pass attempts. Why? He's averaging 34.3 pass attempts per game through the first 3 weeks. Okay, well, that's close, right? That's close. This is going to be a close game, presumably. 42 implied total points. What about his hit rate? 12 out of 20 times, also known as 60% of the time. I checked the math. He's hit this over only 60% of the time, slightly better than a coin toss last year with the Rams. That's in general. What about on the road? It doesn't get much better, y'all. 5 out of 10 times, also known as 50% of the time, he's hit this prop on the over since last season on the road. And of course, I've said it and I'll say it again, the Rams are on the road tonight in Levi Stadium, previously known as Candlestick. So yeah, the numbers just don't encourage me to say that, Stafford is going to go and take the over easily here. In fact, he's going to be fighting an uphill battle trying to get to 36 pass attempts, which essentially, if you're picking the over, that's what you're trying to say. So 0.5 interceptions, we're taking the over on Stafford. Best bet of the night. 35.5 pass attempts, we're taking the under there for the reasons as I have just said. Let us move on to the running back, the starting running back, presumably, for the Los Angeles Rams, and that is Cam Akers. He's scary. This is a scary man to put any type of money on. Thank you for all of you listening to on YouTube. If you can't make it on YouTube, I've got it going on Twitter Spaces right now at No Offseason Football. We just moved on from Stafford. Let's go into Cam Akers. If I'm taking any prop on him tonight, it's only one, and still it's volatile. He is slowly increasing his role as the leading or featured back for the Los Angeles Rams, but I'm just not confident in it. I'm not confident in him. I need to see it first, which is why I'm not big on putting money on guys who just have not taken the role over completely yet. Nonetheless, 42.5 rushing yards for Cam Akers, the former Florida State running back. This is a scary bet for me. Super scary bet. Not a lot of sample size, which is another reason why I typically avoid these bets. It's scary, but you could take the over. Here's why. 2 out of 2 times, also known as 100% of the time. The math checks out. 2 out of 2 times on the road, including the postseason last year, he's hit over 42.5 rushing yards. All right. Well, that's not enough sample size, right? All right. So what about since 2020? Since he missed all of 2021. In 2020, in the 13 games that he played, he hit it 7 out of 13 times, only slightly better than a coin toss. Only slightly better than a coin toss. So again, this is volatile. And the San Francisco 49ers, as I said at the top of the show, are top 5, not top 10, top 5 in rushing defense through the first 3 weeks of the NFL season. So again, if I'm a betting man, if I'm a smart betting man, I'm probably staying far and away from Akers tonight, and we'll just move on from there. But those are some hit rates in case you needed some influence to tell you stay away from Cam Akers' rushing yard prop tonight. Let's move on to Darrell Henderson. For those of you following on YouTube, that hope y'all appreciate these graphics up here. Let me see here. Speaking of, I don't have a Henderson graphic, so that's fine. I'll move the graphic to Cooper Kupp, and we'll talk about Henderson. This is a close one as well, but I feel a whole lot more confident in Henderson because when he does get the ball, he's just so much more efficient. He's not, he doesn't run up the gut. He's got a little bit more vision than Cam Akers. He doesn't just run up the gut blindly and hoping that his offensive line makes the block. He just looks a little bit more smoother and hits his assignment a lot better. He's also averaging 4 yards per carry since 2020. So you only really need him, Darrell Henderson, that is, to get 5 rushes tonight, and he should likely hit his prop of 22.5 rushing yards. I'm going to take the over. San Francisco allows around 30 rushing yards per game, but of course that includes everyone in the backfield. He's going to be splitting it with Cam Akers tonight. And San Francisco, as I said, a top 5 rushing defense, but I like Henderson's efficiency. If I'm taking a bet on any of the running backs for the Los Angeles Rams tonight, it is most definitely Darrell Henderson's 22.5 rushing yards, because he really, on average, only needs about 5 rush attempts, and he can hit over 22.5. I am sick and tired of talking about these running backs for the Los Angeles Rams. They're just not exciting. So let's go to an exciting player, and that is Cooper Kupp, the former Super Bowl MVP, if I'm not mistaken. I am looking at his 8.5 receptions tonight for Prizepicks, for Underdogs. 8.5 receptions. We are taking the under. Why? 10 out of 19 times, also known as 53% of the time, he has hit this on the over, no matter whether he's at home or on the road. What about when he's on the road? As we know, the Los Angeles Rams on the road tonight in Levi Stadium. Doesn't get much better. 6 out of 11 times, also known as 54% of the time, since last year, has he hit this prop on the road, which Cooper Kupp is tonight. And of course, this kind of ties in with Stafford throwing under 35.5 pass attempts, right? So that could be, a bet slip in its own if you buy into the narrative that it's going to be a close game. 42 and a 42-point total implied in this game between the 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to have to take a sip of water here as my throat's drying out. Thank you. And yeah, Cooper Kupp, 8.5. I mean, the numbers are not all of that. They're just not encouraging. 53% overall last year of 8.5 receptions. I mean, 8.5 receptions, you're asking a lot. Even though it's Cooper Kupp, you're asking a lot of things to go right for this offense. You're asking for the 49ers to be leading by at least a touchdown. And, of course, they're only a 2-point favorite tonight. This is going to be a close game. Lots of rushing the ball, probably inefficiently rushing the ball. Lots of good rushing defenses. I'm not excited to take Kupp's over here on 8.5. I'm going to take the under. And just to further enforce that, San Francisco only allowing 9.7, so around 10 receptions a game to opposing wide receivers so far through the first 3 weeks of the NFL season. Again, 9.7 receptions to all receivers, opposing receivers so far through the first 3 weeks. The San Francisco 49ers only giving up 9.7 receptions per game through these first 3 weeks. Well, you can ask yourself, who have they played? They're only giving up 9.7 receptions. I talked about this earlier in regards to Stafford. And They played the Bears, they played the Seahawks, and they played the Broncos. So I get it. They haven't faced nearly some of the best wide receiver options in the NFL. I mean, the Bears were talking about Darnell Mooney and Equanimeous St. Brown, Seahawks, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, who had a really slow start to the season, finally popped off yesterday against the Detroit Lions. And then the Broncos, Cortland Sutton, and I believe Jerry Jeudy got hurt in the last game. So, have not played against, this is going to be the best test, is essentially what I'm trying to say. This is the best test for the 49ers defense going up against wide receivers and Cooper Kupp. So, I'm not saying I'll be surprised if he goes over 8.5. I'm just saying the San Francisco 49ers have done really well up against receivers so far. Let's stay on Cooper Kupp, and we are going to move to his 95.5 receiving yards, which is also extremely, extremely high and asking of Cooper Kupp, who, of course, is still playing like one of the best receivers in the damn game. 95.5 receiving yards is still kind of like a video game number. If we're talking about this on average, like this is insane. What about the numbers? 14 out of 19 times, also known as 74% of the time. The math checks out. 74% of the time, he has hit this prop of 95.5 receiving yards since last season, whether he's at home or whether he's on the road. Also encouraging, speaking of being on the road, the Rams on the road tonight in Levi Stadium. 8 out of 11 times, also known as 73% of the time, he has hit this prop on the over away from home 73% of the time. We are smashing the over here, and we are just praying that he gets the ball enough, gets open enough against this tough 49ers defense, and we're going to take the under on Kupp's receptions, but we're going to take the over on his 95.5 receiving yards, 8.5 receptions, by the way. Let's move on to the highly targeted, but maybe underwhelming tight end in Tyler Higbee so far this season. I'm looking at specifically one prop bet for him tonight, and that's 4.5 receptions. Okay, the 49ers are number 1. Not number 2, not number 3, number 1 in receptions to the tight end through these first 3 weeks. They've allowed 1.7 receptions per game to opposing tight ends so far through these first 3 weeks. Now, again, we've looked at the teams that they've played. They've played some pretty crappy teams. They've played even worse tight ends. Cole Kmet, Will Dissly, Noah Fant, Albert O. I mean, Higbee is, weirdly enough, probably the best tight end out of all of those. So they're going to get their first big test in terms of tight end, wide receiver, and maybe even running back through these first 3 weeks. The San Francisco 49ers defense, that is. So it gets better for us to take the under on the 4.5 receptions for Tyler Higbee tonight. Why? 10 out of 17 times, also known as 59% of the time. I know it's not crazy encouraging. It's slightly leaning on the over, but still, 10 out of 17 times has he hit the over on that. What about on the road? He seems to not be, because the correlation there, we don't know what the causation, but only 3 out of 10 times, also known as 30% of the time, has he hit the over on 5 receptions or more since last season. 3 out of 10 times. That's also known as 30% of the time. I'm not confident. Sure, is Higbee going to get the targets? Probably. But is he going to bring in the receptions? The 49ers defense is saying no. His prop bet, or it's his correlation rather, of his hit rate on the road last season or since last season, 3 out of 10 times, not encouraging enough for me to take the over. Gladly taking the under on Tyler Higbee's 4.5 receptions. It is 6:41 here, Central Standard Time. Let's get rolling through the San Francisco 49ers so that way I can get you guys going for your bets tonight. Tyler Higbee, let's move on to the 49ers quickly. Jimmy G. I've got 3 of them for him tonight. 3, but we'll go fast. 29 pass attempts. This one kind of scares me because I want to take the under so badly. So badly. But the Los Angeles Rams are giving up, or they're facing 40.7 pass attempts per game so far. They're playing in these high-paced, high-volume games in terms of passing snaps that they've allowed and faced 40.7 pass attempts per game through the first 3 weeks. Okay? And the Rams have played. Let's see who they've played. The Rams have played the Bills, Josh Allen, Marcus Mariota. They are playing at a high rate there in Atlanta. May not be the best offense, but they are playing a high rate of snaps. And, of course, the Arizona Cardinals, who tend to turn it up in the fourth quarter. So it makes sense. I don't think that, the only team that is, more slow-paced out of the Bills, Falcons, and Arizona are the Falcons. And still, Rams are facing 40.7 pass attempts per game through the first 3 weeks. That is a large amount. Okay, so how am I picking the under here? Here's why. 9 out of 16 times, also known as 56% of the time, just better than a coin toss, has Jimmy G thrown for more than 29 pass attempts. It's not encouraging. What about at home? Gets worse. Weirdly enough, gets worse. 49ers love to run at home. 3 out of 8 times, also known as 37.5% of the time at home, has Jimmy G thrown more than 29 pass attempts. What about against the Rams? Okay, apparently against the Rams, it's a little bit different. 2 out of 3 times since 2020 has he played the Rams in regular season, by the way. He's thrown for more than 29 pass attempts. So the split against the Rams looks encouraging, but the split in general of hitting this prop bet is not encouraging at all. So on the notes, I have the under. I'm not going to change my stance. If I'm a betting man, I'm taking the under. And in a game that I think is going to go by fast, in a game that I think both offenses are going to try to run the ball, smash mouth, even with Aaron Donald and that amazing front defense in the trenches against the Los Angeles Rams, I still think that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers are going to attempt to run the ball, especially if they have any form of lead. So, Jimmy G, 29 pass attempts. We're taking the under, and we're not feeling amazing about it, but the data says we're taking the under. 0.5 interceptions. You know I like these. He's averaging more than half an interception a game. 9 out of 16 times since last season. That's also known as 53% of the time he has thrown an interception. What about at home? Of course, the 49ers are at home tonight. 5 out of 8 times, also known as 62.5% of the time, he has thrown an interception at home. That is encouraging. Again, he is averaging 0.81 interceptions per game since last season. So he's about an 80% chance of throwing an interception tonight. I like the chances. I think Jimmy G and Matt Stafford both throw an interception tonight. Take the over on both of their INTs. And that wraps it up for Jimmy Garoppolo. Let us move on to the running back here, Jeff Wilson Jr. for the 49ers. I've got 2 bets for him. 2 receptions. I like to target these low numbers, especially when we have a large sample size. Jeff Wilson, 2 receptions. We're taking the under. I think this is likely to tie. I think he's going to catch exactly 2, but at worst, it's a push. So, 2 receptions, we're taking the under. Why? Los Angeles allows only 4.7 receptions per game to running backs. That's in the bottom half of the league. Not the best linebackers for the Los Angeles Rams, but 4.7 receptions per game is quite good, especially when the 49ers have a running back by committee, and there's a chance that they might use other running backs as their pass-catching back, leaving Jeff Wilson to be their main workhorse on the ground. What about his hit rate? 6 out of 11 times, also known as 54% of the time, has he hit the over or tied this, okay? So again, he's more likely to tie than he is to go over. That's why we're taking the under. What about his hit rate at home, which the 49ers are at home tonight? 3 out of 5 times has he tied or hit this at home since last year. A lot of this has to do with the matchup. The Rams have faced the Bills, the Falcons, and the Cardinals, okay? The Bills and the Cardinals don't necessarily have that lead back who can threaten anyone with receptions or in the air, but the Falcons do in Cordero Patterson, and the Rams are still only giving up 4.7 receptions per game to opposing running backs. So I'm going to take the under on Jeff Wilson. At worst, I think he ties with 2 receptions on the dot, and at least it's a push on your parlay, and you can still win some money off of that. And I want to move to Deebo Samuel, actually. I've had enough of Jeff Wilson here, so we are going to move to Deebo Samuel. I've got 2 bets for him tonight. He is included on my best bet for tonight's game. Let's start with his receptions. This is one of our best bets for tonight's game. Deebo Samuel, 5 receptions, so we're taking the over. Here's why. Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams allow the most, not the second most, not the third most. They allow the most receptions to opposing wide receivers through the first 3 weeks of the NFL season. If you didn't know that, you just came to class. Take notes. The Rams giving up the most receptions to opposing wide receivers through the first 3 weeks of this NFL season, allowing 18.7 receptions per game to opposing wide receivers. That is an insane amount of receptions. Jimmy Garoppolo loved Deebo last season, and I think that continues. I think it absolutely continues, especially with the Rams giving up the most receptions to opposing receivers through the first 3 weeks of this newborn NFL season. I'm all aboard. What about Deebo's hit rate since last season? 59% of the time has Deebo hit the over on 5 receptions or more since last season. What about at home? Because we know the 49ers are at home in Levi Stadium tonight. 6 out of 9 times, also known as 66% of the time, that's a pretty good hit rate, has Deebo gone for 5 receptions or more at home since last season. I like my chances on Deebo tonight, and I think he's going to hit the over. This, along with Stafford's prop bet on the interception, those are my 2 best bets for tonight's game. Deebo Samuel. Let's talk about fantasy points for tonight's game. Let me make sure that the line that I have is still up to date, and it is 15.45 fantasy points for tonight's game for Deebo Samuel. I don't typically like to get into fantasy points as a prop bet, but tonight this one's juicy. This one's absolutely juicy. So on top of the Rams giving up the most receptions to opposing wide receivers through the first 3 weeks of the NFL season, the Rams have also allowed the 3rd most, not the 4th, not the 5th, but the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers at 41.6 fantasy points per game to opposing receivers. What about his hit rate? 11 out of 16 times, also known as 69% of the time did Deebo Samuel hit this prop of 15.45 fantasy points or more last season. That's an encouraging amount. It's almost 70% of the time Deebo is getting 15.45 fantasy points or more last season. What about at home? What about the home split? I love it even more. 6 out of 8 times, also known as 75% of the time, Deebo Samuel has gone for more than 15.45 fantasy points at home last season. So, on top of the Los Angeles Rams giving up the most receptions to opposing receivers, giving up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers this season, and he's got a 75% hit rate at home of hitting this prop, gladly taking the over. This is the best bet of the night, along with Matt Stafford's interception prop. Let's run through Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle here over the last 2 ones before we close up shop. So, Brandon Ayuk, 4 receptions. I think this is risky, but I think at best he's going to tie this prop and push it for you. We're going to take the under, okay? I told you about Jimmy G's passing attempts. We're going to take the under 29. So this directly affects Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. But Deebo Samuel's target share is just a lot different than Brandon Ayuk's. 4 receptions. We're going to take the under. Okay? Even though the Rams have given up the most receptions to opposing receivers, this is a close one because of that. Let's talk about his individual split hit rate. 6 out of 20 times. Horrible. 6 out of 20 times. Also known as 30% hit rate on 4 receptions or more since last season. 6 out of 20. It's not encouraging. What about tying it? Can he at least tie it? Only 10 out of 20 times has he tied or hit the over on 4 receptions last season. What about at home? Y'all don't want to hear this. It gets worse. For those of you taking the over on Brandon Ayuk's 4 receptions tonight, don't do it. At home, Brandon Ayuk has gone for 2 out of 9 times, also known as 22% of the time, has he hit this prop bet over 4 receptions since last year. He does not catch 4 receptions or more at home better than 22% of the time. Okay? 22% of the time does he go over 4 receptions at home since 2021. I do not like Brandon Ayuk for tonight's game as far as 4 receptions. Yardage, not touching it. He can go for a big play tonight, although the Rams are giving up the least passing explosive plays of 15-plus yards, so I doubt that happens too. Excuse me. Let's move on to Kittle. George Kittle out of Tight End University. George Kittle has the same prop as Brandon Ayuk tonight. 4.0 receptions for George Kittle tonight. It's a close matchup, but I'm taking the over. George Kittle's role as he comes back from the injury is getting better. I think Kittle and Deebo are the ones who get the most receptions out of Jimmy G tonight as he kind of gets back into rhythm with Trey Lance out for the season. The Rams are bottom 5 in receptions allowed to tight ends. They're only allowing 3.3 per game. But of course, we've talked about the teams that the Rams have played so far this season. They've played the Bills. Dawson Knox had a really slow game in that Thursday night football game against the 49ers. Against the Bills, the Rams. And so they played Dawson Knox. So, the Rams, I'm not too worried about that there. Dawson Knox not exactly the most threatening tight end in terms of receptions. Kyle Pitts, though, was held to a very, very low-scoring game for the Falcons up against this Rams defense. And then, of course, Zach Ertz also. So they've done this, 3.3 receptions per game allowed to opposing tight ends, and they've done it to Dawson Knox, Kyle Pitts, and Zach Ertz in that order. Those are some damn good tight ends, but I think Ertz is right now better than all 3 of them. And all the Pitts truthers are going to get mad at me, throw me under the bus on Twitter, throw me under the bus on YouTube. I don't care. I like Pitts as an athlete. I like him as as a top pick in Dynasty. We're talking prop bets here. We're talking redraft. We're talking season long. George Kittle right now is just better. I'd rather have him season long. What about his hit rates? 12 out of 15 times, also known as 80% of the time, George Kittle has hit 4 receptions or more since 2021. 12 out of 18 times. That's encouraging. That's a man you want to put money on. That's a man you're okay with putting the over on 4 receptions. He's hitting it 80% of the time. You say, whoa. What about at home? What's his home split? I'll tell you what his home split is. 5 out of 7 times, also known as 71% of the time, did the math for you. He has hit this on the over at home in Levi Stadium. Super encouraging. This should have been one of my best bets. This should have been absolutely one of my best bets. But the reason I didn't is because the Rams are just doing so good against tight ends so far. even though it was Dawson Knox. They still did it against Pitts, still did it against Ertz. That's encouraging. So it's a close one, but I think he's going to catch maybe 5 receptions as his line is at 4. Last prop bet before we go over the best bets of the night, so you can lock those in 15 minutes before kickoff here. It is 6:57 Central Time, October 3rd. We are talking Thursday Night Football player props for Underdog and Prizepicks. Last one for George Kittle. This is a close one. Usually when I say it's risky, it's usually the under. And I picked the under on George Kittle's receiving yards last week. And I believe he hit on the over as he's getting warmed up to this offense again, coming off of his injury recently. The Los Angeles Rams are second lowest in terms of yardage allowed to opposing tight ends, behind only the other team on the other side of the ball tonight, the San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers. So the Rams giving up the second least yards to opposing tight ends, and the 49ers giving up the absolute least receiving yards to opposing tight ends. So the Rams only giving up 24.7 yards to opposing tight ends. That does not bode well for George Kittle. So it's going to be a close one. What about his individual hit rate? 4 out of 7 times, also known as 57% of the time, has he hit this prop bet at home since last season in 2021. Same hit rate for overall. This guy is just slightly better than a coin toss 57% of the time, no matter what, as far as hitting 45 receiving yards or more. What about against the Rams? So we talked about his home split. We talked about his hit rate on an individual split. What about against the Rams? He's only played them 3 times since 2020 in the regular season. Asterisk there. In the regular season, has he faced them only 3 times? 2 out of those 3 times, also known as 66% of the time, has he hit this. So he does pretty well against the Rams. He's going for more than 45 yards 2 out of 3 times against the Rams in the regular season since 2020. So I'm going to take the over here. It's going to be a close one. I mean, I would not be surprised if George Kittle hits exactly 42 yards or if he hits exactly 45 yards. But as he's getting warmed up back into this offense, Jimmy G going to go back to trusting his man, George Kittle, tonight. I'm going to take the over on both his receptions of 4 and his receiving yards for 44.5 receiving yards, even though the Rams are second best, allowing only 24.7 receiving yards to opposing tight ends this season. We are 15 minutes away from kickoff, you guys. I appreciate you coming in, whether you're watching on YouTube or whether you're watching and listening on Twitter Spaces. I appreciate you all. Let me put up the banner here. Let's put up the picture for that best bet for tonight's game. Best bet. Cannot make it better for you. 0.5 interceptions for Matt Stafford. Lock it in. It's happening. Why? Stafford. 7 out of 10 times, also known as 70% hit rate on the road. This man throws an interception 7 out of 10 times on the road since 2021. Excuse me. What about his average? He's averaging 1.2 interceptions per game last year on the road. This guy loves to throw interceptions on the road. This 49ers defense is legit. This 49ers defense is allowing the least passing yards through the first 3 weeks of this NFL season. They're going to give him a hard time, okay? So best bet for me tonight, Stafford throwing an interception and Deebo Samuel going for over 5 receptions. Is he going to get some rushing game work that might cut into his ability to get 5 receptions? Yeah, probably. But the Los Angeles Rams allowing the most receptions to opposing receivers through the first 3 weeks of this season is a big surprise. You got Jalen Ramsey, you paid the man, but this defense still giving up 18.7 receptions to opposing wide receivers through the first 3 weeks. That is money. And if we're talking about Deebo's split at home, He has 66% hit rate. 6 out of 9 times has he hit the over on 5 receptions or more at Levi Stadium, which, of course, they are there tonight. That are the 2 best bets that I could possibly give you. And that's it. I don't see any questions in the YouTube chat. I don't see anyone requesting to speak in the Twitter Spaces. I am Jay from No Offseason. We are here to provide you guys with hours of research like this, giving it to you in a short amount of time, 30 minutes. I'm not sure how long the stream has been going on, 48 minutes, just so you can lock it in, so you can make some money. Join the Money Squad. Subscribe to the channel below. It's free. It doesn't cost you a dime. We have a Patreon, but it's not necessary right now. Just trying to get that content out there for you guys and make some absolute money on these showdowns. That's all I have for you guys tonight. I appreciate you stopping in, whether it's on Twitter Spaces, whether it's on YouTube. Follow us on TikTok, Twitter below. Go make some money tonight. You have to take Matt Stafford's interception on the over 0.5 interceptions and take Deebo Samuel 5 receptions on the over. Jimmy G going to go back to his guys and George Kittle and Jimmy G tonight. Have some fun. Crack open a beer. Open that whiskey bottle that you've been saving. Open that wine bottle that you've been saving, or water if you're opposed to this alcohol thing. I appreciate you. Have a good night, and I will catch you guys on Thursday for the Thursday Night Football stream. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to get some research going on. Bring out the money folder. One more time for you. You're watching on YouTube. This is our green money folder, and we will crank out some more money-making props, and I'll catch you guys then on Thursday.